You're supposed to be trying to teach your child to get to know themselves, not you.
Not you.
When you in all this trauma and stuff that we talking about, you're parenting for that little person to understand and get to know you and know how to maneuver in your house.
Right.
So that they can accommodate and, you know, settle your emotions and upsets and things like that.
Deep.
But it's supposed to be the opposite. By the time you deliver them to the world, they're supposed to have a sound sense of, in that moment, I have certain foundational understandings of myself.
Right.
I'm not at my best or in my prime even.
Right.
But I understand certain things about my ways, how I think, what I should be my basics.
Yeah.
Right? Myself is the priority right now.
Have a healthy outlook for self.
Yes. When you deliver them into the world, they should have that. We getting delivered with understanding what our mama do and don't want, what she think about our dad. We know a lot about the people that raised us.
Everything outside of ourselves.
Yes, and very little about us. And then what happens is when we get in these relationships, that's when we start to find out about us.
Because it doesn't align with who we're with.
Yes. Or you get in it and you start to see, why can't I just get better? Why can't I just attract better than this nigga or this girl? And then they start to point out stuff about you as you point out stuff about them.
Yeah.
And you're realizing more and more, I don't know me. Your insecurities start to show.
Yeah.
This is when then all you want to do is have another little person.
Yeah.
So that you can just get back into what was comfortable, which is what your mama did to you. And I say this.
Recreate that thing.
I've said this before. I say this often. I'll say it again. A lot of us as women, we're hiding behind our children. I'm a single mama. That's the way to get you to back off from the stuff I need to go take care of about myself. Girl, I got kids.
I ain't got time for that.
I ain't got time. Yeah. I have a mentorship program, and you know, a lot of the women in there, when you first get in my mentorship program and you pay and you're in it, we have our initial intro conversation, and I work with you on naming your purpose. And it's so hard for women that have children to name their purpose without mentioning their children or some other being.
Yeah.
You have to have a existence reason for yourself. You were you before you were their mom.
Right.
So I'm sitting here and it takes sometimes an hour to just get them to define what they want to be to themselves.
Yeah.
We're not getting rid of your children, but you are an individual outside of them. Stop attaching yourself to them, because what I know in our community is when you attach yourself to the child where there is no separation, you raise them based on that. And so now you're treating them like they're just an extension of you, which is poor parenting. That person is their own individual that is supposed to be getting to know them, not just some extension of you.
Navigate in this.
I agree with what she was saying. And there's an aspect to it, though, that we have to consider. Parents can only parent based on what they know, right? So I can't teach my kids something that I don't know myself, right? And typically, as a parent, you pull from your experiences. And then those experiences are kind of passed down. So I get what she's saying, but it's going to have to take some personal development on a parent's part to be able to be in a position to parent the way that she's talking about. And a lot of times, most parents aren't. And the other thing is you learn who you are. You begin to learn who you are in relation to other people. So I do agree with her saying that as parents, we need to give our kids foundational tools. So I think some of those foundational tools are learning how to be independent, not just independent in terms of being able to know how to pay your bills, but it's also in terms of independent of thought, not being easily led by what other people say, things of that nature. I do think that sometimes you do have parents that invest so much in their kids that they do lose their own identity. And I think it's important for kids to see their parents and, not saying that they're just their parents, but see what their parents' interests are. Because I know, like, they talk about when you go through like empty nester syndrome. And is a true thing. Like me and my husband, we're empty nesters now. And there was a period of time where we had to kind of circle back to figuring out some things because we just tended to neglect ourselves in a sense by putting everything into our kids, everything, their school, to make sure they were okay. And then when they were gone, it was like kind of like a reset. So it is important to learn how to balance between prioritizing your family, but also self-development, prioritizing yourself and allowing kids to see that so they can balance that as well. I had wrote that your children are an extension and a reflection of you. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Part of that foundational stuff that she was talking about is instilling values, beliefs, things like that. And it's important for your kids to understand what they value, what the family values are, things like that, because that do help them develop their identity as well. But yeah, I remember one time saying that when I was in college, that was I wish I did have a better sense of who I am. So I do think that is very important, because when you don't know who you are, or at least have some grounding in who you are, you open yourself up to let other people define who you are. So some level of knowledge of self is very important.
Okay. Did you want to add something, Mila? Just wanted to double check. Go ahead, brother Hank.
So, I mean, look, Sweeney, what you were saying, kids are not a burden. Financially, kids are a burden, whether we want to believe it or not. Most of the time, we don't get our return on investment from kids. It is what it is. It's the beauty of being a parent. You invest a lot of money, financial time, and energy into them. And we don't need to be looking for a return. The only thing you ask for is that you grow up to be a respectful, honest, upstanding type citizen, and that's all you could really ask for. That's your return of some type of moral characteristic that you instill into them, and that they continue to pass that on to their kids. But as far as financial burden, yes, they are a financial burden. There's no return on investment for the most part with our kids. But listen to what I'm getting out of it. I think it sounds like she's talking about individuals who put a lot of pressure on their kids. Parents who try to live through their kids. You know what I'm saying? They I don't know if y'all seen. I don't know if y'all had any of y'all family. I got some in mind where they going out with their daughters to the club and still trying to hang out with them, knowing they probably really too old to still be in the club, but they still want to be in there with them, hanging out, drinking with them, partying with them like they BFFs. Instead of going out there and getting their own set of friends, they want to hang with their daughter's friends, or with their son's friends, and just kick it and enjoy themselves. That's what it sounds like she's talking about to me. Another thing is, I guess, not really developing a life outside of your kid, like I think Mistake was saying, was talking about empty nesters, where you were so centered around your kids. Everything you did was centered around your kids, that you don't know anything else other than that. To the point now, you're getting on their nerves. You're calling them every 5 minutes because you have nothing else or nothing better to do, nothing going on in your life, because it's always been about your kids all the time. And I understand some parents that do it. I know with my son playing sports, there's a period, man. I mean, we would just budget financially all around him, and our summertime vacations, we would center around, okay, when's his AAU season starts? Okay, cool. Then this month we have these 30 days to go on vacation without interfering with his basketball schedule. And we would do that like clockwork for 5 years straight. That's what we did. And then I had to have a conversation with my ex-wife. Said, we got to figure it out. Look, in about 3 years, he's going to be out of high school. We got to learn how to operate while he's not here. And it was kind of hard. It was more hard for her than me. I kind of started doing my own thing and made the function. She always wanted to make sure he was good on whatever he did. And I said, look, let him hang out with friends one weekend, and we can get away and do what we need to do. You know, the transition was tough for her. It was tough for her, and for a lot of parents that kids play sports, they have issues with that. So I'm assuming that's what type of parents you're talking about. Those type of parents who are always involved with the kids so much that they can't see nothing else outside of their kids.
Yeah, Hank, I think you're right on that. That's why I said that being a parent's supposed to open up other doors. You suppose, like, there's things you can find in yourself just from being around your kids that'll open up doors that allow you. Because I've known people who started coaching like Pee Wee football just because they son played, but then they son you know what I mean, they went on to play high school, you know what I mean, middle school, then high school, and they were out of Pee Wee, but that they became that, and they started mentoring other kids. So then when they kids went on to graduate high school and stuff, they were still doing that thing that they loved and enjoyed. You know what I mean? So that's why you're supposed to, like, having kids ain't supposed to stop your life. It's supposed to open up other. Yeah, you don't have access to the things you made, but once done before your kids, but it's supposed to open up a whole new world to you as well. It's supposed to open up other doors to the point where vicariously through your kids, you should be able to see other things that you may or may not be interested in. Like, shit, I know some people who wound up loving to cook because they had to cook for their family, and now they got YouTube channels and shit of them cooking because that's what they did because their kids love to eat. Well, because they had to cook for their kids. They wasn't cooking before they had kids; they started cooking afterwards.
So Sweeney, with that being said, and I feel that we ever truly know ourselves? If we're ever evolving, then each opportunity, each experience that we create, that we have, that then slowly and meticulously changes us as a person.
Mm-hmm.
So it is that I think that's another part that I'm conflicted with, because we never really truly know ourselves. We have a good idea of foundation, but to know as we are ever evolving, I think that's also a part of it that I'm kind of torn with her statement. As if, because she's saying it as if it's a bad thing. If you feel that you know yourself, then that means that you will almost stop growing. You would no longer have a desire to further seek self. But the more that you continue to seek self, the more you learn about yourself, the more opportunities you allow yourself to experience and to have, and you continue to grow.
Yeah, I don't completely agree with that, Vince, because I think I don't think just because you know yourself don't mean you stop growing, because there's different variances of things you're gonna have to deal with that you'll continue going to be dealing with it. So I realize I don't like a lot of chaos. And as I get older, and prior to, you know, when I was probably about in my early 20s, I can deal with it. I can accept it. Now at my age, I've learned I can't. I really can't. I don't like chaos. I don't like a lot of stuff. I don't like to really deal with crowds, truth be told. You know, and before he was always cool to be in the crowd, right? It was a thing to do. But
right,
you know,
that goes into my point, though. Right, at one point that was you, but then as you continue to live and experience, that then changed. You evolve. So I'm not saying that that being set in saying, okay, this is who I am, I know who I am, and I'm not saying that that's necessarily a bad thing, but allowing for yourself to be open to understand that this is going to change at some point, and that comes with life. So that I think that kind of goes into the point.
I think it's just a level of self-awareness, maybe, that like having the self-awareness to be able to identify like, hey, I'm like this now, but based on this information that I've received, I'm like this now. And the all of those things can be versions of you, but you have to have the self-awareness to be able to identify that I'm changing and be open to the possibility of change, because change is inevitable. But being able to identify like, oh, this is something that I like, now I don't. But you still have to be able to identify who you are to then have that level of self-awareness to know that you're changing.
Yeah, I was listening to the video, and I think she kind of touched on. I'm gonna bring it up at the 24-minute mark, and it kind of goes off what you were saying, Mila, about being self-aware. And what it sounds like she's saying is that by the time, particularly the women she used as an example, by the time they happen in relationships, they don't know who they are because the parents may not have been teaching them about self-awareness. And so when they're coming into these relationships, they are discovering all of these things in a relationship. But if they were taught about self-awareness before they entered the relationship and how to identify and understand who they are, then maybe they can show up as a better version for someone else, or when they come together as one.
I think that's applicable to all genders, not just women. Because as a person that dates men, I've experienced where men will talk about they don't have time to work on themselves, or they're too focused on being a provider for their child, where they're neglecting things that will make them better in a relationship. So I think that that's applicable for both sides.
I just want you to understand too, and that's why I said based off her example. She used
Oh, okay.
women. It wasn't that I was, towards the end, she was saying a lot of times women, but it can apply to both. But in her example, she was just saying people show up in relationships. So this
So
is what. Go ahead,
real,
Viv.
real quick. So even in that case, someone could be taught. You can teach somebody something, but once they actually experience it and go through it, is in many cases they'll react a completely different way. As we all know, experience is the best teacher. So it's again, I feel like that's kind of conflicting because my parents can teach me everything that I need to know once I go out into the world. But once I'm in that position, once I'm in that situation, if I'm not mentally prepared, or even if I'm mentally prepared, but once I get into the situation, I freeze, or I take too long to make a decision, or I make the decision too quickly. These are all learning experiences that you have to go through as a person, as an individual. So I think it just sounds as if, to me, as if these is what she's saying is making it sound as if it's something bad. It's only bad if you view it in that manner, I think. But I think that it's essential in growing. You know what I'm saying? I've been with different women that bring out different sides of me. You know what I'm saying? And I'm sure Mila and Mistaken can say the same thing, that they've been with different men that bring out different sides of them. They're able to explore an uncharted version of yourself. So that I think that just comes with being in relationships, living life, experiencing experiences. So
But
I
I
don't know,
think you
man.
have to be open to even allow for those uncharted versions of yourself to be able to be explored. Because if you're not open to the possibility of you being more, or you being open to something that you might have not normally been open to, then you may never have those experiences.
What you think about that, Vid?
Um,
Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean that's a valid point. I think that it's a choice though. You got to make that choice, and that that don't come from your mama. That don't come from your daddy, your grandma. that comes from you simply making the choice. So I think that is the way that is being discussed is more fearful than encouraging. And I think that that's the biggest problem that we have with a lot of topics in our culture, in our community, is that a lot of the topics are talked about fearfully, much rather than it being enlightening, encouraging, because you have no choice. As long as you're breathing and you're going outside, you're going to experience different experiences. So either you're going to be afraid of them or you're going to embrace them. And that in between those decisions is going to show and validate, solidify what type of person you are and what type of life you have.
Hey, Viz, I think you're making a good point, but one of the things that I think is important is to start young.
Of course.
It's not a guarantee, right, that the child or the person, once they become an adult, that they're going to be able to make the right choice or somewhat of a better choice with less consequences. So what we do know is that sometimes people get in their ways and they become stubborn. It's almost like you can give somebody the game and they still don't do it. They still revert back to those habits and continue doing the same things that's not getting them the results. So starting early by helping our children identify, being self-aware, or at least have an understanding. Because one of the things that I say is that I could be 100% right in my head, but to the masses, I'm wrong. And if I don't key in on that, then I'm going to be one of those people that's just out here continuing to be in my own head and just not aware of what's really happening. And we have a lot of people out there that's existing that don't really understand the reality. Like in your head, you're seeing everything as being okay, but on earth and how the world functions, they're not measuring it that way. And that's why you're not getting the results, is because you continue to think that this is the way that it's supposed to be. And you can't step outside of your mind for 1 second to relook at how you've been attacking this situation, how you've been living your life, and seeing if there needs to be any adjustments. And that goes back to what Mila said, as far as having an open mind. Like a lot of people don't have an open mind for change. A lot of people do not see anything being wrong and how they're moving and how they're conducting themselves in life. And you could talk to them until their face is blue and they still don't see it.
Yeah.
You know? And then those are people you be like, you know what? I've done everything I can. You on your own. And if they have a hard life, sometimes it may be our children as well. You can try everything you want to do. Once they get a certain age and they just don't see it, maybe you're not the right person to be able to get them that message, and or they just don't want to get it. And
Yeah.
at that point, you can't force a grown person to kind of see it in a different way. But but it takes a certain person to even go back to be like, damn, am I tripping? Or am I really giving them the game and they just really not seeing it? Because sometimes you got to look back and you could be wrong, but it takes a certain individual to be able to come back, relook at the situation again. These people ain't trying to do that, man. They don't give a damn. They just trying to live their life, just be who they are, and they don't give a damn about any criticism, any change. They're not trying to hear.
So 2 things to that. I 100% agree with everything you said. The first thing to that, those people that think like that, that's perfectly fine. It's their life. If they're happy with what other people would view as being miserable, then so be it. Just embrace it. That's the life that you chose. So follow through with it. The second part is that if a person is consciously, and I'll use the stove analogy, if an adult is consciously touching a hot stove and getting burnt by it every single time, then that's on them. It's nothing that nobody can say to them to change that. You know what I'm saying? And at the same time, like I said, if that's what they want to be, if that's what they want to do, then so be it. Now, I think on a mass scale that can be destructive, but that I think that only grows when the messaging that person lives by is being pushed out to the masses, where it now becomes infectious.